I did. You?
No, this one,
Ah, okay.
when I realized that, we were pushing.
Were you able to check in already?
I was.
Oh, good. Where are you staying?
In the room.
Oh, okay. I'm at the West End. I like it to go.
We'll have that conversation.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I'm trying to find my login. Do you want to
Louisa
get?
knows it.
I do. But I was
Just-
trying to find my.
I want to open the meeting. Please begin recording. Excellent, thank you. I apologize for that delay. Wow, I feel amplified. Welcome to the Audit Committee meeting of the State Bar. As a reminder, this meeting is being recorded. Can we call roll call, please,
Sure.
from our esteemed coordinator,
Yes.
Justin?
Okay. Broughton, Chen,
Here.
Dellen,
Here.
Seleg. I thought I saw Sean. Did he go? Okay, I don't see Sean. Shelby,
Present.
Tony,
Present.
we have a quorum.
Excellent, thank you. Next on the agenda is a call for public comment. State Bar staff will attempt to call members of the public in the order that they appear in the attendee pool. For those who are participating via Zoom video, you should have a function for virtually raising your hand. It is a hand icon and should appear at the bottom of the center of your screen. If you wish to address the committee, please click the hand icon now, and State Bar staff will call on you in the order that hands are raised. For those who are participating by phone, I'm going to get this microphone right. For those who are participating by phone, you may virtually raise your hand by pressing *9. That is the star key, then the number 9. Again, doing so will alert staff that you would like to make a comment, and State Bar staff will ably call on you and open your microphone so that you can address the committee. Due to time constrictions, we cannot allow more than 3 minutes for each speaker. Please identify if there are any members of the public who wish to address the committee.
There is one member of the public with their hand raised. And Louisa, I'm going to need help to unmute because I'm a panelist right now, so I can't unmute the participant. But it is Betty Williams, the CLA Vice President. Your mic has been unmuted and you have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I just wanted to see if it worked. I had my question raised in the last session and I don't think I got called on unless I missed it when I was stepped away for a moment. So I do not have a comment. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Betty Williams, for helping us identify that the system does work. We appreciate that.
There are no other hands raised.
Excellent. Going once, twice.
Oh, there is a hand raised.
Justin, no.
Okay.
Rachel's having issues with her Zoom.
That's a staff person who's having a Zoom glitch. Yeah.
Okay. Then there are no hands raised. I'm corrected.
Excellent. Barring any additional hands, we will move to the chair's report. Very excited that we are meeting today. I think the last time we met as a committee was to look at the audit before it moved over to the legislature. We have a very robust agenda, and so looking forward to an engaging conversation and appreciate everyone being in attendance. Next is consent. Do any members of the committee wish to pull an item off the consent calendar? If committee members do not wish to pull items off the consent calendar, call the first item. Would anyone like to pull? Okay, great. And that is the approval of the January 2022 open session minutes. May I have a motion?
My suggestion was I was going to make a motion to approve the entire consent agenda.
Oh, yes. You know what? I actually I would like to pull something from the consent agenda. That's why I've got to pull it together. I need coffee. I apologize. I've been up since 3 a.m. I actually want to pull item B from the consent agenda. I have a small edit that I'd like to make. Excellent. So the motion was initiated for item A by trustee Dellen and seconded by trustee Tony.
Yes.
Excellent. All those in favor, say aye. We have to call. Can the secretary please, or can someone please call the roll?
The committee coordinator, I will call the roll.
I feel like this is a comedy of errors today. Welcome to the New State Bar.
Broughton, Chen,
Yes.
Dellen,
Yes.
Saleg,
Having just joined about 20 seconds ago, I will abstain.
okay.
Welcome.
Tony,
Aye.
that is 3-4, 1 no, 1 absent, 1 abstain. The motion passes.
Excellent. In relation to consent agenda item B, I had one edit that I would like to include and that item, I'm sorry, is the approval of the April 27, 2022 open session minutes. I'd like to call the item. Are there any corrections or modifications to the open session minutes? I do have a modification. In that conversation, one of the things that I did want to go on record in terms of inclusion was, thank you, you're so kind, was, now I can't read my handwriting, was outreach to the legislature as it related to additional time for us to move through the audit. I think one of the things that Mr. Bullock shared with us when he presented to us back in April was the fact that other public agencies, comparable agencies, have 6 months to prepare for the audit and we have 4. And so at that point in time, I remembered sharing that I thought it would be great if we could follow up to see if there was an opportunity for us to get two additional months, because I know that the finance team works aggressively at the end of the year to turn that around. And we typically approve the audit as a committee and move it forward. And so I wanted to make sure the minutes reflected that because I do think that is something that is important. Any other modifications? Barring none, let's call the vote.
You need a motion?
I'm sorry.
I'm happy to move it.
Thank you.
I second.
Thank you. Moved by Chen, second by Dellen. Please call the roll.
Broughton, Chen,
Yes.
Dellen,
Yes.
Saleg,
Yes.
Tony,
Aye.
the motion passes. That's 4 for it, 1 absent.
Thank you. Next agenda item is 3, and that is business. Our first item is item A, update on information technology security assessment. This will be a discussion and a presentation. This presentation will be led by the State Bar's Chief Administrative Officer, Steve Mazur, who is with us here, and Mr. Srinivasa
Ayanaparty, our new IT
Srinivasa Ayanaparty. Mr. Ayanaparty, please forgive my pronunciation of your name, but I'm going to get it right. Thank you for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
So as Louisa is getting the presentation booted up, I do just want to introduce Srinivasa. He's our new IT director. He's actually been with the State Bar for the last year and a half as our IT applications director and has impressed us all very much during that time. And about a month ago, he has stepped up to be the new permanent IT director. He comes to us with 20 years of very high-level IT management experience. So we feel very grateful to now have him as the head of our IT organization. And we express gratitude as well to our interim director who served us ably for the year and a half before Srinivasa stepped up. So Srinivasa and I will tag team this this presentation. We do take the security of our IT systems very seriously, as you know, and we appreciate the opportunity to provide this committee with periodic updates about those efforts. So excellent, the clicker is working. Our reports to you often take the form of updates about the specific independent security assessments that we conduct periodically, and we will of course be talking about that today as well. It is important though to point out that the bar's security initiatives are informed by multiple inputs and they're evaluated regularly. Security is something that our IT team is thinking about every day, not just as part of annual or biannual assessments by outside experts. So we have a little tagline here: cyber and network security is a journey, not a destination, and our team does try to live that. Okay, moving on specifically now to the assessment. Excuse me. We do them periodically. There are two main flavors of assessments. One is focused on network security, the other on application security. We provided an update to you about the last application security assessment previously. Today, we're discussing the network security assessment, also called cybersecurity. Network and cybersecurity, also infrastructure security. They're not all technically exactly the same thing, as our IT team is frequently pointing out to me, but colloquially, the terms are used somewhat interchangeably, so we will be discussing them using all of those terms somewhat back and forth. We are really excited to announce this partnership that we have developed over the last year or so with several parts of the state of California IT team. We have done some other recent work with the California Department of Technology, and that led to our connection with the California Military Department's Cyber Network Defense Team, which we engaged for the most recent security assessment. They have deep expertise in this area, and they also have a really holistic view of what's happening in other state agencies. So we feel like it's been a very smart move to engage with them, and we do plan on an ongoing partnership with this organization. So with that, I'm going to now turn it over to Srinivasa to talk about the actual assessment that was done. Srinivasa, please take it away.
All right. Thanks for that introduction, Steve. And I'm very glad to be here at the State Bar. Coming to this network security assessment methodology, C&D conducts their assessment using a two-team approach. One team, risk analysis team, plays defense, working from the inside on defensive controls. And the second team, penetration team, plays offense, mostly working from outside using simulated attacks on our network. These two teams work independently. And of course, there are obviously a lot more nuance to this methodology, but just want to give it at a high level. And C&D analysis covered 11 control families of the cybersecurity framework from National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's in short called NIST. These are national recognized standards. NIST is actually, the institution itself is 100+ years old. These national recognized standards are also adopted by the California Department of Technology. And part of looking at the results, the first part of the assessment results is about the 11 NIST control families as they relate to the State Bars network. Out of the 11 control families, C&D found 3 to be excellent, exceeding the expectations, 4 compliant, 4 that need remediation. Those 4 are either fully remediated after that, or some of the parts of it are part of our ongoing security initiative, depending on the specific nature of the issue. We cannot publicly discuss any details about IT security that could open us up to more possible security threats. So here we are just discussing general concepts, not specific results. And we have classified, in addition to the control families, C&D reviewed and made some recommendations about a wide range of specific things related to our networks. I divided them into 4 importance levels: critical, high, medium, and low. Critical items were remediated right away, even before they submitted their reports. High important items were remediated within the first 90 days, and remediation of the medium and low some of them are done and some are in progress as part of our ongoing initiatives. Let's zoom back and look at our security posture. In looking at the security posture, this is kind of a sampling of the categories of security strategies and efforts that are always underway. We have always taken security seriously, but it has been much more regimented activity in the last few years. And it's also a key aspect of the IT operational plan that will accompany BAR's new 5-year strategy plan. And this one approach that we want to highlight is defense in depth strategy, which is an approach that uses multiple layers of security to protect the data and the applications of the State Bar in a very holistic way. And another approach is zero trust, which basically assumes from a security perspective that everyone and everything is a potential threat. So it's a very comprehensive strategy that we are adopting. Having given that high level, talking about the future security assessment, we are planning to, security is baked into our regular operations and our regular thinking now. But the special independent assessments remain an important part of our strategy, and we do have plans to conduct them again early next year. So these are planned for Q1. I hope that you found this update useful. Thank you. Steve?
Thank you, Srinivasa. Any questions from the committee?
So I do have a question. Thank you for that presentation. One of the things that is always drilled into my head as a law firm leader is that the most vulnerable part of our organization is actually the people. And that's how, people tend to get into the system and ask for passwords, or they pretend to be, an IT administrator. What is the State Bar doing to make sure that its workforce is trained on those threats?
I'll speak to that briefly. We have instituted a series of training programs, formal training that is mandated. Additionally, there are sort of little phishing expeditions that happen, lots of tests that come out in various different forms or flavors. And, we then have stats on how many people sort of passed, meaning they didn't fall for it. And the ones who do, inadvertently get duped and click on the link or open the attachment or something, a little pop-up pops up to them and tells them that they have been sort of caught up in this exercise, and then they are subject to some additional training. So there's many other things going on as well, but those things, it is much more front of mind. So those things do
Great.
happen.
I appreciate that.
I do have a question. This is Sonia Dillon. Hi, Steve. Do you have any multi-factor authentication for the users?
Yes, everyone has that.
And it's multi-factor.
Yes.
And do you also have for those who are not able to, is there an email where the user can send the phishing email, like abuse, so that they can let you know that these have popped up, and sending to you a notice that there is a phishing? Or do you just expect them to be deleted?
Well,
Can I say?
yes, Srinivasa, why don't you address that?
Yes, we do have multiple ways that they can flag those emails to us. Any phishing exercise, anything that's suspicious. And I'll just mention two of them. One is sending an email to a specific email address, and also they're able to flag certain items directly on the item itself. So there are different ways and methods that they can reach out to flag anything that they see suspicious, including the phishing emails.
Thank you. And do we also have classifications of when sending out email, as in secured email with, proprietary or confidential or public?
We do have.
Is it an encrypted? Do we have encryption of any sort in sending out email?
We do have secure ways of sending emails, information out. I think on the encryption part of it, yes, we do have encryption, but I would like to leave it at that. I would not go into the more details about encryption.
And are you able to flag violation of those encryption, those that are not encrypted?
Okay, can you ask that question one more time? Sorry.
So if I send an email from the CalBar email, sending out confidential information, but I did not encrypt that, will the system know that I did not encrypt that email?
I just want to, I don't know if we want to get into sort of details.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
In a presentation like this, obviously we can't really want to disclose exactly the things that are in place, because that potentially just opens us up to more.
Thank you.
I know it is a little odd to give a presentation.
Understand.
Higher level, but it is necessary.
But I would offer this, and thank you for that. I would offer this, Trustee Dillon. Maybe you want to touch base with Srinivasi and Steve offline, and I'm confident they'd be able to give you the responses that you need.
Certainly.
Will do. Thank you so much.
Yes.
I had a question about frequency of assessment schedule, but I will ask you that question offline as well, because I realize there may be some level of sensitivity to that. So
Thank you. Thanks for understanding.
Trustee Tony?
Thank you, Chair Shelby. I really appreciated this presentation, and just the sense that, giving us an update, and also just splitting out the application security and the network security. it's an education for me. One thing I'm curious about, and, you may come back to another one, is the one thing I may have expected or been curious about, and, at least at a high level, is I'm sure you must have done some sort of network security modifications or some in response to the Tyler Technology Odyssey breach. And, that's in between your general reviews of the entire system. So I think that's the kind of thing that's useful when we're talking about IT security assessment, that it's the type of thing that the public will be curious about. Well, how does this apply to the Tyler Technology Odyssey? That was certainly in the news. And so is there anything you could say about that in general without,
Sure. So just as a reminder, the Tyler, just to make sure it is sort of clear, the Tyler security issue was a security vulnerability in their application that did apply to many, many other systems throughout the United States, approximately 80 or so. So that was their security vulnerability that allowed that issue to happen. That was remediated thoroughly with the solution that they came up with, because it was their proprietary system. And yes, we did implement other things from some lessons learned, in addition to just specifically the security update from Tyler. So I'm not going to say more about that in detail, but yes, other things were, we took it as a learning opportunity.
That's what I'm asking. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Yes.
Any other questions? Thank you again to Srinivasi and to Steve for joining us today and bringing us up to speed on this issue. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And welcome. Well, I know you've been at the State Bar, but welcome in your new role as the IT Director.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Next on our agenda is item B, an update on internal controls audit. It's a discussion and an oral presentation. Item 3B, and it is a presentation by Araceli Montoya Chico, our Chief Financial Officer.
Yes, it's me. Hello, everyone. Nice to see you again, some of you. So I don't have a presentation for this item. It'll be rather quick. But in the Audit Committee Charter of the Board Manual, it does call for the Audit Committee to monitor the State Bar's internal controls for adequacy and effectiveness. It also does state that the Audit Committee should ensure that our fiscal control policies be reviewed every 5 years by an independent consultant, and to make sure that the Audit Committee evaluates those results, findings, and recommendations from the independent consultant. So the last internal control audit was done in 2018, and that was performed by the public accounting firm Moss Adams. This year, MGO, who's actually also our financial statement auditors, they are the ones that are performing the internal control audit. And in terms of the status, we really did just kick off this engagement. We are in the very, very early stages of this audit. They've asked us for our policies. We recently provided that to them, and right now they're reviewing those and they're developing their audit plan. So really not a lot of test work has been done. I do expect that they will ramp up their test work later this summer and into the fall. The time period that they will cover will be pretty much every single quarter and through the first few days of Q4 of 2022. So I don't anticipate a report and the results to come out until probably late into Q4 of this year. So that's kind of where the status of where this item is.
Thank you for that. And I should have said it was going to be an oral presentation. If you could just, for the public, maybe share an example of what will be reviewed as it relates to internal controls audit, I think that might be helpful.
Sure. So for example, they are going to focus a lot on our finance controls. So let's say invoices, right? We have invoices that our AP team processes, and there's supposed to be controls in place of who can review and the different levels. We have different levels depending on the dollar amount of the invoices. So if in our policy it says that an invoice needs to be reviewed depending on the dollar amount by these 3 individuals in these, you know, various levels, that's the kind of stuff that they're going to test to make sure that our policies, they're going to select samples and make sure that we are following what our policies are stating. And again, everything will surround around internal controls. They're going to cover finance, human resources. They're going to focus heavily on IT also. And what is the other one? HR, finance, and IT. I think those are the 3 main offices that are going to be impacted by this internal control audit.
Any questions? I want to just thank the CFO for that. You always have a way of putting things in layman terms where those of us who do not have financial backgrounds can understand very clearly. So we appreciate that.
Thank you.
Our next agenda item is business item 3C, an update on the State Bar Office of Compliance. And this is a presentation by our Executive Director, Leah Wilson, and by Yuween Xiang, our Chief of Mission, who just joined us recently. So thank you.
Okay. Are you doing the presentation? Okay. Hi, Yuween. If you could put up the presentation. So we wanted to update the Audit Committee on our efforts to make real an internal compliance function at the bar.
Can you see it?
Not yet. There you go. You can go to the first slide, the next one. So the purpose of the Office of Compliance is, as you can see on the screen, to proactively monitor compliance. Sounds pretty obvious. And here we're really focused on statutes and rules, obviously sort of external compliance, audits. Y'all are very familiar with that. And then internally, our own policies and procedures. You could advance. So some of you may recall, probably of this group, maybe only Hyland, that when we established the Office of Research and Institutional Accountability, the institutional accountability part of that title was intended to be an internal compliance function, not necessarily a full-blown internal audit function, but certainly an internal compliance arm. And just being candid, this work has never fully gotten off the ground at the bar. We did do a pretty comprehensive scan of our compliance with statutes and rules. I believe that was completed in 2019. But the follow-up has not been prioritized, and certainly nothing systematic and ongoing has been put into place. And really, this is about the lack of dedicated resources for the function. And that has changed in the 2022 budget that the board approved. We do have a director of compliance. That director will be reporting to Yuween, and we, through staff reallocation, will have 2 additional staff persons in this office. And so when we go to the next slide, Yuween will talk a little bit about how we plan to set it up.
Okay, so as Leah explained that right now we are in the process of designing and developing this small office. The goal is to devote some intentional energy and attention to the important aspect of the State Bar's work meeting compliance requirements. So we are engaging with a consulting company who has extensive experience in government compliance work. And the goal is that they can bring us up to speed. And the scope of work includes, they recommend scope and structure of office, recommend staffing types and levels, develop initial 2-year work plan and associated metrics, and provide training and technical assistance to compliance staff. And we have a tentative timeline here. So the relationship between this compliance office and this committee, we are thinking about two areas. One is to submit our office work plan when we have worked, after we have worked with that consulting company for you to review. Also, we plan to provide regular progress reports to this committee. If you have any other suggestions and ideas, please let us know.
So I think it's great that we're doing this. I think this will be a really fabulous addition to the state bar for so many reasons. I guess two things. One, as part of your work with the consultant, I think one important thing to consider is whether there is at least a dotted line reporting relationship to somebody on the board in situations where there is something to audit or look at with respect to senior executive leadership. It's typically good practice in these situations to have a dotted line relationship reporting either to the board chair or to the chair of audit for situations where reporting up to senior executive team wouldn't make sense. And then second, in terms of relationship to the audit committee, I think we need to consider to what extent the audit committee sets any sort of direction with respect to special items for the Office of Compliance to look at, or looking at the scope of what is the compliance office going to be looking at on a regular basis, kind of looking at scope as opposed to simply receiving progress reports.
I think that's great. Both of those are great pieces of feedback. And maybe we can build in having the consulting firm have a conversation with the audit committee as it's developing its recommendations for us.
That'd be great.
Any other questions? I just had a question regarding timeline, and I know it might be a little too premature to ask that question, but if there were any thoughts in terms of timeline or defining kind of the scope, has that emerged in any of the conversations with the consultants, or is it too premature to ask that question?
Right. I think what we've gotten so far is that the project would be completed by January of 2023. Within that, I don't have a good handle on the timeline for scope.
But that's helpful because that means that the project would be completed, or a timeline would be kind of articulated by then.
The project.
The project.
Yeah.
Okay, that's excellent. Anything else? Thank you very much. Next item is item 3D, update on public trust liaison. And this item will be led by Leah Wilson.
So this is another update. I'm going to have a nice nexus in terms of the reporting structure. You can advance, Louisa. Just a reminder, the full board has, I believe, seen a similar presentation about the public trust liaison, formerly called the ombuds position, but after seeking some legal advice and digging into what exactly the public trust liaison is going to be asked to do, made a determination that this is a more appropriate title. So this type of function has been recommended for the state bar since I can find at least the 1990s in multiple reports about the bar. And of course, our most recent state audit called out a specific need for this type of position and urged us to take a look at the State Bar of Texas, which does in fact have, is the only discipline system, attorney discipline system that I know of that does have an ombuds position. So obviously we know there are repeated complaints and concerns raised about our discipline system, maybe not so visible to the board, are a similar volume of complaints about our admission system. And so the initial thought here is that this function will focus on both discipline and admissions. If you could go forward. This is a list of what the public trust liaison will and will not do. And I'm going to say one of the key differences that I understand, as I understand it, between this role and more of a traditional ombuds person is the intent for engagement and follow-up. This person will not simply be a repository for receiving complaints, but there will be an expectation, certainly when the complaint is about a process, somebody not returning a phone call, somebody not acknowledging receipt of information. There is an expectation that this liaison will get involved to get the situation unstuck. And that's different than the traditional, much more, I'd say, passive ombudsperson. However, like a traditional ombuds, the liaison will also be required to develop and file an annual report and to recommend systemic solutions or changes to processes, procedures, operational practices. What they won't do is listed there on the right-hand side. They're obviously not going to get in and advocate for anybody. They're not going to be able to overturn decisions that are made either by our discipline office or our admissions office. You can go forward. In terms of the reporting structure, and this goes back to the conversation we just had about the Office of Compliance, as currently modeled, this position has a dotted line reporting structure to the Audit Committee, not just for particular functions, but for all of its work. There is intended to be a level of independence there with this position. We've also figured out a relationship to OCTC's external auditor in particular. The public trust liaison will be able to recommend cases to the external auditor. So when something is really concerning to the public trust liaison, they can send that over and recommend it. That would be above and beyond the random auditing that is done by the external auditor. We've also figured out the relationship between the public trust liaison and our whistleblower policy and other personnel policies. These are all sort of the nuts and bolts of establishing this position. It's more complicated than it seems. And so that has been worked out in consultation with outside counsel. Lastly, the recruitment is well underway. And I am really excited about the candidate slate here. A lot of really good applicants. And I'm also excited that Melanie has agreed to conduct the second round of interviews. And so I'm trying not to bombard her with a huge number of folks sending on to the second round, but only those truly exceptional candidates that I believe can do the job. So it's exciting to be in that position. So I certainly hope by the September board meeting, we have a position in place and a person in the position, able to have them come and introduce themselves to the audit committee and to talk a little bit further about exactly how you want to exercise your oversight function there. So that's the update.
Any questions? Mr. Tony?
I just want to say how much I appreciate the advancement in the thinking of this position. When it was first presented as an ombudsperson kind of position, I didn't know what that meant or what it was going to do. And I also think that that term is a very archaic term that most people of the public have no clue what it means. But to reframe this as a public trust liaison, I think is the absolute right direction to go. And the specification of the duties and responsibilities makes me feel really good about this. So I just want to commend you, Leah, in particular, for continuing to think about this, to improve it, to advance it, because it's at a really nice place now where I think it's going to make a big difference. So thank you for that.
Thank you. And I want to give credit to our HR director, Justice Israel, who actually came up with that title. I was struggling, didn't know what to call it. And I think he's got a hidden talent in naming. It's great.
Yeah, I echo those things. I think this is great. I also want to urge us to look at some metrics for effectiveness of this public trust liaison. So looking at where we are today with how many complaints we get, the types of complaints we get, how, what is the public saying about how we're doing, and then at some point after the public trust liaison has been in place, compare that to, have those complaints gone down? Have they changed in nature? So to start looking at effectiveness metrics, that'd be great.
Melanie. I totally agree with that. And thank you for that too, creating a baseline for us to be able to see how it is going to be, how effective it is. So thank you.
Yes, I concur. And I think in advance of getting to metrics, I was thinking back to when we were all together in person and we were finalizing the strategic plan. And in that conversation, we talked about so many of the things that the State Bar does that people aren't aware of. And again, I think the name is masterful because it's very clear in terms of what this role is and what is it supposed to do, and what it is supposed to do. But outside of that, as I was thinking about the strategic plan, and we were talking about just how do we communicate broadly, externally, in terms of different things that are here to advance public trust and accountability. What an incredible role to include in that as it relates to outreach and engagement. And so once a person is identified, I think it would be wonderful to communicate this broadly with all of the stakeholders and constituencies and think through a rollout campaign of some sort so people begin to understand that this is yet another cog in the wheel that the State Bar has placed as it relates to public trust and public accountability. And so congratulations.
Thank you.
Next, we are going to move to the approval of next we're going to move to item 3E, approval of 2022-23 Audit Committee Work Plan. And this is going to be presented by myself and Justin. What I will say is that Justin and I get the opportunity to engage every 2 weeks. And it is so beneficial to have him from a staff standpoint, really engage with the audit committee, just not simply based on his knowledge of the State Bar, but his commitment to what transpires. And so we've been talking at length about the work plan and the work plan for this particular year. I'm going to make sure everyone has their phones off because someone's phone is ringing. That would be mine. Just wanted to make sure everybody was present and accounted for. But this is like a comedy of errors today. I don't know what's going on. So, but that being said, and so really looking forward to a conversation. He is going to present what we anticipate to be the plan, but really looking for members of the audit committee to share their opinions. And if there are other things that have not been identified here that you feel need to be included, looking for you to share that as well. So Justin, I'm going to hand it off to your very able hands.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to second what Chair Shelby had said, that this is supposed to be an engaging conversation. This is also a living document, so we're adopting it as is now, but if there are things that come up, we can always bring it back to future audit committees and add things to the plan. The agenda item kind of speaks for itself, but I will call out a couple things to show the work of the audit committee. The audit committee reviewed the business continuity plan in the last year. That was in September of 2021, the annual financial statements in April of this year, and the IT security assessment. We had a previous update, and then we just had one at this meeting. So the audit committee is following the work plan that we currently have and reviewing those items. There was one change to the work plan, and it is an enhancement. That is changing the mission advancement and accountability item to the Office of Compliance. And I won't go into that because we just had a presentation on that, but that's going to beef up our Office of Compliance and dedicate more resources to be more effective. There are two things that we have tentatively added to the work plan, and they are the first one is the public trust liaison, and that ties back to the strategic plan. The reason we're looking at this and adding things to this work plan is to adhere to the newly adopted strategic plan. And so that public trust liaison ties back to the new strategic plan. We just had a presentation on that, so I won't go over that. But the one item that we're also adding to, or proposing to add to the work plan that hasn't been spoken about so far at this meeting, is the organizational audit with a focus on diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this audit is going to take a look at all aspects of the bar. We haven't defined the scope of this audit. That will come back to the audit committee to kind of help define the scope, but tentatively we want to look at our hiring practices. We want to look at our procurement practices. We want to, look at various different things and how we rank with our diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that has been proposed to be added to the work plan. So that is a quick summary. Knowing that we're at 4 minutes over, I don't want to go too much in, but I'm happy to answer any questions or we can have a discussion. I'll turn it over to the committee.
Mission Advancement and Accountability Division. Yeah.
Any thoughts, comments, endorsements, changes, reflections, something?
So one thing that I think sometimes is hard in audit plans is I think often audits can do a good job of assessing how it is we're doing with the things that exist, but it can sometimes run into challenges in identifying like where are we missing something. And I don't know where this falls. Maybe it's, business continuity made me think of it, but it's not a business continuity issue. Do we have a way of assessing whether we have the appropriate protocols, checklists, workflows for addressing a crisis situation that is unexpected? And I'm thinking in particular of a communications workflow. And with respect to, the bar exam question issue that arose, making sure everyone knows when something unexpected happens and it's bad and we need to address it, here's who needs to be notified, here's the phone tree that needs to happen, here's sort of the processes. I don't know where that falls, but it seems like an audit type function that we should be looking at.
Sure, we can add that to the work plan. We do have.
Right, you're off.
We do have that. But certainly, I think it would benefit from your review. And there is, as you point out, a really important distinction between having it and making sure that everybody is aware of it. And in that crisis moment, you recall exactly what you're supposed to do. So we do have it, and we recently sort of updated it based on our experience with the data breach. But we can certainly add that to the work plan.
Great. It's kind of like a crisis management kind of thing. Yeah.
I think that's an excellent point. As you were talking, I feel like that falls in a couple of places. I know that the internal controls audit is transpiring, but that's an internal control piece as well from the standpoint of, when I thought about that, and of course, what came top of mind for me was the data breach. And so I think that's an excellent point. Any other comments? I believe this is an action item, correct?
That is correct.
Thank you. Let me grab my notes, please. Can we put the resolution on the screen?
Sure.
Be it resolved that the Audit Committee adopts the Audit Committee 22-23 work plan included in this item as attachment A and provides it for adoption by the Board Executive Committee. May we get a motion?
So do we want to amend it to add?
Oh.
Yep. I think we could, I don't know, Justin, if you saw how we amended the Finance Committee item? No.
I did, but if you asked me to recall on the spot, I don't recall.
Okay, I think as attachment A, as amended to include adoption or review of crisis communication protocols.
Thank you.
My bad spelling. There we go. Thank
All
you.
O's.
Well, none of us have to spell anymore. We have spell check. You're not alone. All right. May I have a motion? Do I need to reread it? I don't need to reread it.
I would move adoption.
A second.
Moved by Tony, second by Chen. Can you call the roll, please?
So
Ron.
moved. This is Sean.
Thank you. Can you call the roll, please?
Broughton, Chen,
Yes.
Dellen,
Yes.
Saleg,
Yes.
Tony.
Aye.
That's 4 votes for. The motion passes.
Thank you. We're now going to move into closed session. Pursuant to Government Code Section 11126E1, the Audit Committee will move to closed session to consider the items listed on the closed session agenda. Open session meeting is adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. We are back from closed session, and we've returned to say that there were no reportable items taken in closed session, and we are going to adjourn the Audit Committee. Thank you, everyone, for your time.